Hey, it's Ephruz here with information regarding stuff that has happened in day one of CES. Today I decided that based on the news that I've seen for today, monitors seem to be everywhere, and it seems like in terms of technological advancements, we've pretty much seen it all, and from here on out, it's just going to be new products based on the technology that has been shown to us so far. So I decided that I'm going to talk about monitors today. I might miss a few that are going to come out in the coming 2 days or be announced in the coming 2 days, but I feel like I'll have the same opinion, as I don't really think much of the same type of monitors aside from brands and prices, and I don't really think that's something worth discussing. It's pretty easy to assume that, like, say you have two of the same monitor, one's more expensive, then that one's going to be less worth it unless you're loyal to the brand. So for the most part, I think we have everything covered here. So first off, I'm going to talk about HP's 35-inch OMEN monitor that they announced. It's a 35-inch 1440p 21:9 100Hz G-Sync display. So it's basically a fully featured current generation monitor, but that's the thing, is that it's current generation, and this is being announced at CES. So I feel like with upcoming display technologies and price drops, the $1,300 price tag of this monitor is going to be a tougher pill to swallow when you start looking at the monitors that are coming out in the coming months and or year or so. We're starting to see like 4K 120Hz monitors, and I feel like there's going to be absolutely no point in buying a monitor like this unless you are talking about needing a larger amount of screen real estate. And the thing about screen real estate is that you can have a 4K display, but if you have to upscale stuff, your screen real estate effectively has been lessened relative to getting a larger display of the same resolution. Now, on top of that, some apps still don't support having any sort of scaling. So in that sense, it's just, for compatibility reasons, more wise to get a monitor that is large as opposed to a monitor that is high resolution and smaller. But if you can get both of them, then I would definitely recommend doing that. So this, I think, is the largest 1440p 21:9, not by much. If I recall correctly, the previous ones were 34 inches, but at the same time, I feel like that's not going to mean much. I see this as more of a casual gaming monitor, not in the sense that only casuals are going to use this, but if you're somebody who plays games and wants to lay back and experience the game, this is the kind of monitor you would get. When it comes to competitiveness, it is an AMVA Plus panel, and it has 4 milliseconds delay, so it's suboptimal in terms of being able to receive information as quickly as possible. And then in terms of resolution, it's not necessarily bad for editing, but you're probably going to want more than one monitor of this size and resolution anyway if you're editing, simply because it is easier to use that space. So what I want to talk about next is the Acer monitors that have been announced. I feel like these monitors are a lot more important to a lot more people, despite their prices as well, and I feel like this is the most tangible form of innovation for a consumer. And basically, we're getting higher resolution displays. Acer's announced a 30-inch 1080p 21:9 200Hz G-Sync display. It's going to cost $900, and this is extremely nice. This is a great balance between a refresh rate, resolution, and screen aspect ratio. A lot of games on the highest end graphics cards are going to be able to run at 200 FPS at 2560 by 1080. You might have to tweak some settings in the sense that you might end up needing to go down to medium settings on some of the AAA titles, but then on some more competitive games or first-person shooters, you might be able to get away with higher settings, older games as well. So I feel like this monitor is a very capable display in terms of having a pretty good balance in terms of everything that you can do with it. It's 2560 by 1080, so you can do video editing. It's 200 Hz, so you can do pretty smooth gaming. though it's a VA 4 milliseconds panel, so in a competitive sense, it's not necessarily the most optimal monitor, but it can do everything pretty good, which is more than I can say about a lot of monitors, since typically monitors are optimized for one or two things, so like gaming, and then like streaming and editing, and then more serious competitive gaming. And speaking of competitive gaming, this I feel like is a more important, not a more important, but this monitor is going to have more reach for a lot more people. Acer has announced a 24 by 5 inch 1080p 240 Hz G-Sync display that's going to start at $550. And I really like this price point because right now the only 240 Hz 1080p display that's out is the BenQ XL2540, at least as of the recording of this video. And that monitor costs $500 and it doesn't have G-Sync. So I feel like this monitor from the get-go is going to be driving prices down. And then we also know the premium that comes with a lot of new monitors. They usually go down in price very quickly after they're released. Early adopters tax is definitely a thing in this sense. And then Acer's also announced a 27-inch version of this same monitor. So it has pretty much all the same specs and features, but it's 27 inches. I feel like 24.5 inches is more appropriate for serious gaming because 27 inches is a lot of screen and you don't want to be looking all over the place for information. So 24.5 inches is more appropriate in that sense. In fact, a lot of professional gamers will not play games at full screen simply because they want to be able to see everything right in front of their eyes. And they don't want to have to move their eyes very much to receive more information. Because then they would end up losing focus on something else that could be on the other side of the screen. That is a potential issue. So the next thing I want to talk about is that ASUS has announced a 4K 144 Hz G-Sync HDR monitor. And I'll get into what HDR means in the next couple articles. But basically it just stands for high dynamic range. And I'll talk about that later. But basically this is what I was talking about in terms of monitor innovation definitely being pushed in a way that is going to drive monitors like these down in price. You're definitely going to be able to afford more 21:9 high refresh rate displays in the near future when the highest end displays are starting to be 4K 144 Hz. Now obviously the question you ask there is, well, why doesn't this just cost $1,300 and this costs like $3,000 or something like that? And that's simply because you can't continue to just drastically increase price because your monitor is capable of doing more and more. Regardless of whether you have a monitor that is capable of doing all these things, people simply put are not going to buy it until prices go down. So I feel like you're going to see stuff like this monitor probably go under $1,000. You're going to see monitors like this go under $700. Monitors like this go under $400. Not necessarily soon, but maybe a year from now. And then monitors like this will start taking the $2,000-ish spot in terms of being like the absolute highest end monitor you can possibly have. Though obviously this kind of monitor is meant for gaming more than anything. 144 Hz is definitely for gaming pretty much only, since a lot of creative software, even though it can render at 144 frames per second, doesn't actually get to share that media anywhere that supports 144 frames per second. Now, for some reason, I don't see a display size. 27UQ implies 27 inches, but for some reason it just doesn't say 27 inches. But 27 inches 4K is also a very high pixel density, so this is suboptimal in terms of having to scale up all your applications in Windows, and I already talked about that earlier in the video. So this is mostly a gaming monitor. It says it has a DCI-P3 color gamut, which is 25% wider than sRGB, which I feel like is going to bring beautiful visuals to games. So if you think 144 Hz is enough, I think it's time for you to consider investing in better looking higher resolution displays instead of higher refresh rate displays like the Acer monitors that I've shown before, because these are 8-bit TN panels. They're probably going to look the same, if not slightly better, than the highest end 144 Hz displays that we have today. So the next thing I want to talk about is that Dell has debuted a 32-inch 8K monitor. Now 8K, for those of you who want some scale, is 4K displays in the shape of a rectangle. So this is 16 1080p displays in the shape of a rectangle. That is a lot of pixels. I find it funny that this has been announced because MKBHD, like a few weeks ago, released his Q&A video, and he talked about how he probably won't publish 8K video until he can watch his own videos in 8K, and now this monitor is announced, so he can go do that. And YouTube supports 8K, so I feel like we're going to start seeing 8K video be uploaded by people who own cameras that are capable of recording at that resolution. So this is really nice. It's obviously extremely high pixel density for the size, so you're going to run into issues with Windows scaling compatibility, though I feel like this is definitely a very, very capable Mac display. I'm not sure if it's going to be a quote-unquote Mac display in the sense that Apple endorses it, but this is definitely something that should be on the table for that. On top of that, it has 100% Adobe RGB and sRGB coloring, so it's going to look great. The colors that you want when you're editing videos are going to be the colors that you get, and then you won't really have to worry about much more. Now, it doesn't say whether this is a HDR display, but I assume 100% Adobe RGB is better than that. But I haven't done the research, so. It's going to come out on March 23rd and cost $5,000. So if you're a creator, you're probably the only kind of person who's going to buy this. And then they also announced a 27-inch 1440p ultra-thin display that is HDR and has USB Type-C connectors. So HDR is pretty much the name of the game in terms of the newest aesthetic improvement in display technology for panels. It's going to cost $700. It's going to come out the same day as this monitor, though I'm not sure if this monitor is going to be that big of a deal to a lot of people. We're probably going to need to see some reviews first to see if this competes with any of the other HDR monitors that are coming out for the price. Now, I decided to look up a monitor that I feel like is appropriate for what I was thinking about. Full Windows compatibility, because this monitor is 42.5 inches and it's 4K. So it would be like having four 21.25 inch monitors in a 2x2 setup. This, I feel like, is the kind of monitor that needs to be refined in 2017. I want to see HDR, I want to see, or higher color gamuts than that for that matter. Perhaps higher refresh rates if you want games. Now, obviously, it's going to cost a metric ton of money, but with a 83% color gamut I think this monitor has, it's definitely not the most optimal editing device in terms of accurate colors. So this is the kind of monitor I would like to see have like 100% Adobe RGB support, though beyond that, I feel like these other monitors are going to offer so much more to people who do more than just create. And then this monitor just has like so much screen real estate you can't. I feel like 8K is the highest you would get at 32 inches because past that, you're not really going to take advantage of the extra pixels, and you would need monitors to be bigger for that to happen. Now, this is a monitor that I was looking at that basically talks about, now this is an article that basically talks about how HDR has been introduced pretty much across the board from multiple brands at CES. So they have HDR TVs there, HDR monitors, basically trying to show people what HDR is capable of. Now, obviously, I can't see it because I don't have an HDR display. And then like all these illustrative type pictures are meant to give you a relative scale. So the idea is that if you make your monitor look like this darkened area here, an HDR monitor would look like this monitor, which I'm not sure if you can fully back up that claim. We'll probably have to wait for reviews again. And then they're showing differences in terms of how dynamic the HDR can get. use the reference that I mentioned a few seconds ago. Now they're saying that G-Sync is going to support HDR, and then so is FreeSync 2, and the new HDMI standard 2.1 is going to support this. This is something that is getting to the point where it's out of my realm of knowledge. So basically, I'd be somebody who, if I got this monitor, would be like, it looks great, and I can't really explain how any of the technology works because I haven't looked it up. So I guess that's all I have to say about monitors for CES Day 2. I really like where display technology is going. It really makes me look forward to what's going to happen with mobile devices, since we're starting to see higher refresh rates in mobile devices. Whether we're going to see better looking phones, or whether they're all going to stick to AMOLED still, or whether they're going to have HDR, lower resolution displays than like 8K or 4K or something like that, or whether we're going to start seeing HDR, higher refresh rate displays in laptops. This kind of technology makes me look forward to what's going to happen once it transcends the desktop market, because the desktop market is pretty much what gets everything first. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.